You're nobody, so don't pretend you matter, Mom said. Honestly, we forget you exist half the time, my brother added. I tapped my fork lightly against my glass and said, This won't take long, just 3 sentences. By the second sentence, Mom's face had gone pale. I didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even blink, because when you grow up with people like mine, you learn to wear your face like armor. You learn not to react, at least not in a way they can use against you later. That's how our brunch began. They call it brunch, but honestly, it's just Sunday lunch with mimosas and an extra serving of judgment. The menu changes, but the atmosphere never does. We were halfway through an impossibly dry quiche when Mom decided it was time for her usual performance review. She loves turning family meals into annual evaluations, except I never applied for this job. You're nobody, she said, as if commenting on the weather. Don't pretend you matter. Ryan, my younger brother, whose greatest life achievement is existing in the Wi-Fi era, chimed in. Honestly, we forget you exist half the time. He laughed like it was a clever joke, like we were all in on it. I didn't laugh. I reached for my glass, tapped it lightly with my fork, and said, This won't take long, just 3 sentences. They both looked up, their forks frozen mid-bite. Frank, Dad, this copy's for you, I said. Then I pulled a plain black folder from my bag, nothing fancy, and slid it across the table. No grand speech, no raised voice, just a gentle push over the linen tablecloth. Ryan looked confused, like he thought I was handing out resumes. Mark, Mom's husband, whom she married when I was 15 and stopped calling my father as soon as the ink dried on the papers, leaned forward like he expected concert tickets. But Mom didn't move. She just stared at the folder. Finally, she picked it up and opened it. First page, second, third. I watched it happen, the slow shift in her expression, like someone realizing the brakes don't work and the wall is closer than they thought. Her fingers trembled slightly. Mark went from smug to pale. Ryan's fork hung in the air as if he didn't know whether to keep eating or run. She reached the last page. You little bitch, she whispered. Mark stood, his chair scraping loudly against the tile. You said you deleted those files, he snapped. I stood too, adjusted my sweater and grabbed my bag. The originals are already with people who matter, I said. This is just for your personal enjoyment. And I walked out. Let's rewind a bit. 3 months before this delightful family brunch, I moved back in with them. I told them I couldn't afford my apartment anymore, that I was struggling and needed help. Mom reluctantly agreed to let me stay. By reluctantly, I mean she said yes, but made it clear I'd owe rent, do chores, and keep my attitude in check. Ryan, by the way, lives there too. No job, no rent, no chores. He contributes nothing but dirty dishes and unsolicited opinions nobody asked for. I got the laundry room. Not the guest room, not my old room. The laundry room, complete with a dryer that rattled at night like it was possessed. Every time it shook the wall, I reminded myself, just a little longer until I find what I need. Because I didn't move back to mend fences, or because I had nowhere else to go. I was there because I knew there were things they never expected me to find, and I was going to find them. But at brunch, none of that showed on my face. I poured orange juice, passed the butter, smiled when Mark made his weird fake jokes about millennials who can't do laundry. Ironic, since I was the one washing his clothes. I said thank you when Mom handed me a napkin, as if she'd done me a favor. Nobody asked how work was going or what I was working on. The closest they came to attention was, "You still driving that little car?" For Christmas, I got a mug that said favorite daughter, which is hilarious because I'm pretty sure they forgot to wrap it until that morning. Ryan got new smartwatches and a trip to Cancun for mental health, while I got to vacuum the stairs. So yeah, that moment at brunch wasn't exactly planned, but it felt ready. When I saw Mom's face go pale, Mark's eyes dart to the door like he was calculating how long it'd take to bolt, and Ryan finally shut up, I knew I'd hit the mark. I didn't need to yell. I just needed to tell the truth. I wasn't even close to done. You know how some people talk about their childhood like it's a sitcom, full of inside jokes, quirky family traditions, and awkward birthday stories everyone laughs about now? Yeah, that's not my childhood. Mine was less Full House and more Survivor, just without the prize money. From the outside, we looked normal. Holiday cards with forced smiles, family vacations that somehow made it into photo albums, a fridge covered in Ryan's terrible school drawings like he was the next Picasso. But inside? It was like growing up in a group project where I did all the work and still got blamed for the bad grade. Ryan was always the star, the golden child who could break things and be called spirited. I spilled a glass of juice once and got sent to my room for being careless and dramatic. At some point, I seriously wondered if they forgot I existed. When I was 9, I came home excited because I'd won a small school art contest. It was a minor thing, but I was proud. I showed Mom the certificate, and she said, "You really should focus more on science. Art won't get you anywhere." That same week, Ryan brought home a ribbon for Best Listener. She framed it. That stuff builds up. It wears you down in places nobody sees. You start to wonder if you're the problem. Maybe you're less interesting, less likable, less worthy. The only person who didn't treat me like an afterthought was my dad. He wasn't flashy or dramatic, didn't give speeches or try to win Parent of the Year. But he was there, helped with homework, made the best grilled cheese sandwiches, listened to my endless book rants, and actually remembered what I said. He was steady, quiet. I didn't understand why Mom was always so irritated with him, like his presence in the same room was a personal insult. Looking back, she treated him the same way she treated me, which explains a lot. I didn't question it, until the day everything cracked. I was 12, sitting in the living room, eating dry popcorn and watching a show I didn't care about. Ryan was upstairs, Mom was on her phone. She turned off the TV and said she needed to show me something serious. Never a good sign. She scrolled to a message, handed me the phone, and said, "This is from your father. You need to know who he really is." The message was short, one line. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." I stared at the screen, not fully processing, like my brain had frozen. She said he was dangerous, that she always knew something was wrong with him, that she was filing for full custody to protect me. She rubbed my back like she was the hero of the story, told me I didn't have to be scared anymore. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, stunned, like the floor had dropped out and I was still falling. Then came the court hearings, the silence, the new rules, no calls, no visits, no, "we'll figure it out." Just an ending. My dad was erased overnight, like he'd been cut from the script, and I was told to be grateful. The years after, Mom called healing, which is funny because she didn't heal anything. She just rewired the control panel. I became her emotional punching bag, her live-in maid, the kid she didn't want but had to tolerate. Ryan got louder, lazier, meaner. I became invisible. She stopped pretending we were a family. It was clear I was there so people wouldn't gossip if she sent her daughter to live with someone she called unstable. Love, warmth, basic human decency, it all vanished. I didn't think about Dad much, at least not seriously. I boxed him up, labeled him dangerous, and shut the lid. But some things don't stay buried, especially when they never made sense. There were too many inconsistencies, too many moments when someone mentioned their dad and I felt a weird ache, like grieving a death nobody acknowledged. That message, it never felt right. My dad wasn't like that. He was the guy who cried during Finding Nemo, who apologized if he raised his voice, who said he loved me every time. But I stayed quiet because questioning one lie meant questioning everything, and I wasn't ready. Fast forward to my mid-20s. The ache got louder, the questions heavier. One day, I picked up my phone and texted a number I wasn't even sure still worked. "Hey, not sure if this is you, but wanted to say hi, Leah." He replied in 15 minutes, and that's when it started unraveling. I didn't go back, not after brunch, not after the folder hit the table and Mom's face did that thing where her expression cracked, but her pride wouldn't let it break. I walked out and didn't look back, didn't take leftovers, didn't even grab my coat. It wasn't that cold, and honestly, I needed the dramatic walk more than sleeves. I rented a short-term place under a fake last name. Nothing theatrical, just to keep things quiet while the dust settled. 2 hours later, Ryan texted, "What the hell did you do? Mom's freaking out, Mark's yelling. They won't say what's going on." I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, but because I really didn't want to. Let them stew, let them sweat in their button-ups and wonder how their house of cards caught fire. I'd love to say I had a grand plan from the start, but it began with a hunch on one lousy night. I was 23, couldn't sleep, and kept thinking about that message Mom showed me when I was 12. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." The one that made me cut my dad out of my life like he was a threat, made me fear my own memories. But the older I got, the less it added up. My dad was the guy who made animal-shaped pancakes, who said safety first, like a mantra. He wasn't the type to send death threats. So one night, I texted him, "Hey, not sure if this is you, but wanted to say hi." He replied in 15 minutes. "Leah, I've been waiting for this for 10 years. We met in a park 3 days later, neutral ground. I half expected him to look different, colder, like the image I'd held was just a kid's fantasy. He looked the same, just grayer, a bit smaller. We sat on a bench, finished 2 coffees before I asked about the message. He didn't flinch, just shook his head slowly and said, "I didn't write it, didn't send it, would never do that." He didn't beg or cry, just said he was sorry I believed it, but understood why. And the weirdest thing? I believed him, not because he had proof, he didn't, but because my gut stopped screaming the second he said it. So I started digging. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. I wasn't a hacker or a conspiracy nut, just a daughter trying to figure out what the hell happened. I took courses, got certified, became a licensed private investigator. Yeah, a real PI, not the trench coat kind, but the kind who does boring paperwork. Digital forensics, record requests, metadata, tracking bank transactions. I learned it all. When I had the skills, I moved back home. Told Mom I lost my job, couldn't afford rent, needed a little help to get back on my feet. She rolled her eyes and said I could stay in the laundry room. Perfect. While she piled on dishwashing duties and made sure I contributed, I searched, and I found it. It started with an old laptop tucked behind sweaters, password protected but nothing I couldn't crack. Inside were folders with innocent names like Legal First and Asset Backup. One was literally called Do Not Open. I opened it. There was a draft of that fake message. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." Typed in a text document, saved 5 days before Mom claimed it was sent, with notes in the margins, edits, even a pop-up comment. Too dramatic? But that wasn't the worst part. I found emails between her and Mark back when they were just friends. They discussed making Dad look unstable, securing the money. And the money, Mom claimed Dad made a bad investment during the divorce, that half their assets vanished. But in another folder, because of course she kept everything, I found scans of bank records, transfers to an offshore account, shell companies, all in Mark's name. They stole everything: the house, the business, the assets, the custody agreement. They left Dad with nothing but a ruined reputation. So yeah, I printed it all, made copies. One set went to Dad. The folder I slid across the table at brunch was just a keepsake. Back to the present. 3 nights after I walked out, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. It was Dad. He didn't say hello, just stood there with a tired smile and said, "They called me. It's starting." His lawyer had filed the papers, reopened the case, started the process to recover the money, the house, and clear his name. Things were moving. He came in, I made tea, and we sat on the couch like it was a normal week. Then I asked, "Want to know how I found it?" He nodded, and I told him, not everything, not yet, but enough. When I finished, he just said, "You didn't have to do this." I replied, "I didn't do it for you. I did it for me." Then the messages started. "Ryan, what's going on? Are you seriously ruining the family over old stuff? This is too much." Then Mom, one line, "You're not done? Don't think you're done. Cute." I didn't reply to any of them because I knew what was coming, and they had no idea how much I still had to say. It didn't take long. The legal letter arrived 2 days after Dad filed the lawsuit. A certified, thick envelope that makes people go quiet when they see it in the mailbox. I wasn't there when it arrived, but I heard about the screaming. Mom opened it in the kitchen, read the first page, and dropped a glass of red wine in the middle of the day. Mark tried to stay calm, which was funny since his name was right there on page 2. I can only imagine how fast he Googled what happens when offshore accounts get traced. Ryan, poor Ryan, kept texting me like I was just going through a phase. "You don't have to do this. We can fix it." Fix what? The fake message? The stolen money? The 20 years they treated me like a spare part? Sorry, buddy. That ship's burned. The court documents were airtight. Emails, drafts, bank records, the works. My folder wasn't just evidence. It was a full audit. The judge moved fast, not out of vengeance, but clarity. He said it was a system of deceit that undermined custody, finances, and personal safety. Translation, they lied for years repeatedly on paper. The ruling, full restitution. Every stolen cent had to be repaid, with penalties, with interest. They had to liquidate the house, the cars, the investment accounts. Mark even tried claiming he didn't know what was going on, that he trusted his wife's financial planning. That might have worked if he hadn't personally signed the transfers. The house sold in 3 weeks at a loss. Mom moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet and no insulation. For the first time, she didn't throw a housewarming party. But she wasn't done with the drama. About a week after the ruling, she made a final move. She created a social media account in my name. Same photo, same bio, even copied one of my old posts word for word. Then she started posting crazy updates, claiming Dad abused her, that I was unstable, that we hacked her accounts. It was pathetic and stupid because it took a digital forensic expert 15 minutes to trace the account to her house. Same Wi-Fi, same browser history, same laptop she used for her Pilates classes. The judge didn't even get mad. He just looked at her like she was a math problem with no solution. "Ms. Hartwell," he said, "you fabricated a message, stole from your ex-husband, and now you're impersonating your daughter online." She tried to cry. It didn't work. Even Mark wouldn't look at her. And Ryan? He vanished as soon as the money dried up. No loyalty, no apologies. Just a quiet unfollow on social media and, presumably, a frantic job search that doesn't require a resume or accountability. He hasn't texted since. I'm fine with that. Dad bought a house, not a mansion, just a modest place with a real yard and a porch that gets good afternoon light. He called it peaceful, meaning free from my ex-wife's voice echoing off the walls. He invited me over the day he got the keys. When I walked in, he handed me a coffee mug and said, "No big speeches, just thank you." That was enough. We sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, but the kind where your body finally remembers it doesn't have to flinch anymore. He asked what I was going to do next. I said, "Live like I didn't have to build myself from scratch." He nodded. Good plan. A week later, I got an email from Mom. Subject line, "One day you'll understand." It was predictable, full of "I did what I had to do" and "You betrayed your family," ending with "You were always ungrateful." She signed it, "Love, Mom." I didn't reply. I archived it in a folder called Unsolicited Fiction. No grand announcements, no social media video, no essay about healing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted silence. And that's what I got. No more explaining myself, no justifying why I felt like a guest in my own family. Just silence, a kitchen with real food, a living room that feels like mine, and a dad who tells dumb jokes and never uses them to hurt. They said I was nobody, said it to my face, behind my back, at brunch. But the funny thing about nobodies? We watch, we remember, we learn how systems work, especially broken ones. And when we finally speak, we don't shout. We bring receipts. They said I didn't matter. Turns out I was the only one keeping score. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. Could I have done it quieter? Maybe just left and built my life without digging up what they tried to bury? But then I remember how long I stayed silent, how much I let slide, how they counted on me to keep doing it. So no, I don't regret it. But I'm curious what you think. Did I do the right thing? Would you have walked away or slid the folder across the table? Drop it in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe.